Welcome to In Her Voice. My name is Kelly Covert, and I am passionate about helping women live authentically by listening to their inner voice. Get ready to be inspired by women of all walks of life that have set aside their should-bes and not good enoughs and are standing in their true voice, the voice of wisdom that each and every one of us has inside. Hey there, this is episode 16 of In Her Voice. My name is Kelly Covert, and I am your host and guide as we talk to women of all walks of life about how listening and connecting and living by their inner voice has totally shifted and transformed the way they go about their life in this world. And today we have Sarah Williams on the show. She is an adventurer. She used to work in finance, and after 8 years, she just felt like she couldn't do it for one more second. And so she spent 18 months traveling the world. She climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. She backpacked around South America. She did all of these things. And what she discovered during that time is that she was put here on this earth to motivate and inspire women and girls to do big things. And that's how she created her business, Tough Girl Challenges. And she is also the host of the Tough Girl podcast, where she interviews other female explorers, adventurers, athletes, and everyday women who have overcome great challenges. She's super cool, and we're going to talk a lot during the interview about the challenges and adventures that she's done, things that she has on the horizon. I'll give you a little hint. She's through hiking the Appalachian Trail solo this summer. And we just really dig into how physical challenges like these can really help us connect with our true inner voice by building confidence. It's just a really interesting topic to me. And I see so many women out running marathons and doing these physical challenges. And I think we really get into the heart of why. She talks specifically about several practices that she uses to help her prepare to face her fears, especially when she's going out to do big, huge things like hike the Appalachian Trail. We talk about the power of vulnerability, which is one of my most favorite things to talk about. And my favorite part of our discussion was when we talked about why we need to give ourselves permission for so many things. I hope you enjoy this interview as much as I did. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. Welcome, Sarah Williams, to the In Her Voice podcast. I'm so excited that you are here to talk about all of your adventures and what that has brought to you in your life. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful. So you have quite the bio, which I shared with my listeners before we got on. And where I sort of wanted to start is this. Why do you do what you do?
Oh, that's such a great question. I suppose I do what I do because I'm so motivated and inspired and I really want to help other women and girls. I started going into local schools in my area to talk to young girls about their goals and their aspirations, to try and, encourage them and motivate them. And when I was talking to these young women, what I was hearing back from them about their goals and their plans for the future was just so little. They wanted to grow up, basically to become pretty and to marry a rich man. And in the UK, we have something called a WAG, which is the wife and girlfriend of a footballer. And all these young girls are telling me that that was their goal in life. And I was just thinking to myself, how can this be our next generation of women growing up, and that's their only ambition? And I went home that evening, I started looking through all the papers, just flicking through, and suddenly I started to notice, I was like, hold on, how can our young women grow up and want to be anything when they can't actually see the role models? There was no female explorers, no female adventurers, no female sports stars. There was just no female role models. And I could have sat back and I could have just complained about it and said, well, you know, it's not fair, it's just very unfortunate. But I'm very much a doer. So I thought, well, how can I change it? What can I do to make a difference? And that's why I started the podcast, basically, to increase the amount of female role models in the media. And it's been my driving mission ever since. And today, actually, I've just celebrated my 100th episode, which is pretty amazing.
Oh, congratulations. Yeah, that's wonderful. So what you do is you take amazing physical adventures, and then you also coach other women through that. And I'm interested to know, what is it about physical challenges that has helped you to understand who you are, that has helped you to connect on a deeper level with that inner voice?
I think sometimes, especially with women, your inner voice can be very mean and very nasty in how you speak to yourself. And sometimes whenever you think about a physical challenge, whether it's a 5K, a 10K, a marathon, climbing a mountain, running across the Sahara Desert, you start to get these doubts, these feelings of uncertainty, and that can be in sort of any aspect of your life. But what happens when you have a challenge, when you have a goal that you aim towards, especially a physical one, and you start working towards it and you start making progress every single day towards your goal, and then suddenly you go out there and you go and do that race and you run, you run all the full 5K without stopping. You get this feeling of accomplishment and you think, oh my goodness, I've done this incredible challenge that I didn't think was possible. And then what starts to happen is you start to build your own inner confidence yourself, your own inner belief in what you can do and what you can achieve. And your voice starts to change because it starts to say, hey, I did this, I completed this, I finished this. And what happens then is you can start to apply that to other areas of your life, whether that's your career, your family life, relationships, and it just helps to build that inner confidence.
I agree. And I think, I don't know if my listeners know this, but I've done Ironman triathlon before and was very sort of deeply into the endurance community in my area. And I agree that it can absolutely build that internal confidence, that all of a sudden you understand the power of yourself as a woman. And I've also seen that sometimes women take that external validation of completing the goal, of doing the thing, and they get to the finish line, and then that feeling goes away. And then they feel like they need another finish line, that they need another thing to do. So how do you help women and yourself too? Like, how do you make sure that these physical challenges that you're doing are not about having to do the thing, having to have that external validation?
It's really interesting you say that, because I remember after I finished Marathon des Sables, I crossed the finish line, I got the medal around my neck, and I possibly had about maybe 10 seconds of joy. And I was like, yes, I've completed this incredible goal that, I'd spent 18 months working towards. And then after that 10 seconds, I was already starting to think, well, what's next? What else am I going to do? And I think for me, what I try and talk about and what comes across in the podcast is, it is amazing to have a big challenge and a big goal and something to aim towards, something that you've got to grow and develop as a person to accomplish. But actually, it's not just about achieving that goal. It's about what you learn along the way. It's about what you learn about yourself, what you can do. And there are so many instances. I remember when I was climbing Kilimanjaro on summit night, and we were woken up at 11 o'clock in the evening and we started walking at midnight, and it was pitch black and we're climbing up this mountain step after step, and my inner voice was just telling me that I was too slow, I was too tired, that my feet hurt, I had a headache, that I wasn't going to make it, I may as well stop, why didn't I turn around? And actually, by making the decision to think, hold on, no, I'm not going to listen to you anymore, I am going to make it, I'm going to start having a positive voice inside my head and a positive can do. Yes, you can do it, keep moving forward, step. It just makes a massive difference. And I think also what happens as well is, after you've accomplished quite a few challenges, then you almost don't need the external validation anymore, because you start thinking, well, actually, I know I can do it. I know I can run a 5K, a 10K, I can do an Ironman, I can do that cycling challenge or whatever challenge it is. And that's when you know that you've really expanded your comfort zone.
That's a great point. And I had never really thought of it like that. So I really appreciate that perspective, but I think that you're exactly right. And that doesn't mean that you have to stop doing those things. It just means that you learn different lessons now as you do them.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And it may come, you think, actually, you want to do something even bigger or more extreme or whatever it is may be. But actually, sometimes you can just apply those learnings to other areas of your life.
And I think if you have been doing extreme things like extreme endurance events, it will feel extreme to not do them. And then there are lessons to be learned in that as well.
I don't know about you, but one of the big problems that I certainly suffer from is when you get into the endurance world, you can start having this mindset that more is better, the more miles, the better, the more strength and conditioning, more. Whereas actually, it's not necessarily about the quantity, it's actually about the quality and trying to get that balance right between, being healthy and fit and doing challenges, but also not exhausting yourself out and burning yourself out, which can happen.
That leads me to another question I wanted to talk to you about. And it's this idea of, when you are training for the Marathon des Sables or hiking the Appalachian Trail or, whatever amazing adventure that you're going on, how much time do you spend on physical training and the importance of that versus how much time do you spend on emotional and inner training and the importance of that?
9 times out of 10, the challenges are mental. It's you obviously have to have a certain level of physicality, and you've got to put in the work, and you've got to put the time on your feet. For example, for the Marathon des Sables, I initially focused on my strength and conditioning and did 6 months working with a personal trainer to get very, very strong, but also to get very, very lean. And at the end of the 6 months, I was deadlifting, 100 kilograms. My body fat was 14%. I was the strongest and fittest I'd ever been in my whole life. And then I started the endurance phase for about 3 or 4 months. But equally, it's the mental side. And that's it. This is things I think you pick up over time. And, things that I found worked for me is the visualization is hugely important. I used to imagine myself running across the Sahara Desert. I could imagine myself crossing the finish line. I've seen pictures of the race. I've seen pictures of where we've been sleeping. I've watched videos of people going through checkpoints, and I would see myself actually going through those checkpoints. And I think when you see it, something obviously happens in the mind, but the power of visualization is absolutely paramount. I think one of the top tricks I learned was doing this what if scenario. So, and I've just actually applied this now to the Appalachian Trail, which I'm going to be doing this summer. And all it is when you're in a nice, safe, comfortable environment like I am now at home, I get a piece of paper, I draw a line down the paper. On the left-hand side, I basically write down every possible fear or potential situation that I could face, whether that's, what would happen if your shoelace broke? What would happen if you decided you didn't like it? What would happen if a family member got ill? What would happen if you came across a bear? What would happen if you got a hole in your tent? All of these different scenarios that is just getting you to think about, well, how would I handle that situation? What could I do? Because the fact that you're in a nice, safe, comfortable environment, you can really think through all the different options for you. So actually, if I am on the trail and I come across a bear, for example, or I have to deal with lightning, I've already thought it through. I already know what my different options are. And it helps to sort of put those fears at rest, basically, because you know that you've already sort of thought it all through. And I'm not saying that I'm going to have all the answers for while I'm out there. There's still going to be these, this unknown, this uncertainty. But I think even going through that process and managing to nail down 80%, 90% of the potential situations you could face, it just means when you're going into any challenge, you're automatically feeling more prepared, and your inner chimp or your inner voice is almost feeling more prepared as well about what could happen and how they would handle it.
Yeah. And I love both of those practices of visualization and what you're doing of going through and addressing your fears, of understanding what that fear feels like if it's happening, and then putting yourself in that situation of being able to deal with that in your mind. And I think that we oftentimes discount that. And I think what happens is we only go to the fear part and we get scared, and we don't go to the next logical step, which is, okay, what will happen? What will I do in that moment? Because that's really where the freedom from the fear comes, is in the next step of that practice. Don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. But I think what does happen is people start thinking about all the fears and potential reasons why they can't do something. And you've actually got to take to the next level and almost think, well, why can I achieve this? Why am I going to be successful? So it is, if you can just flip it into the positive, it's another great trick or tip that you can use to help really prepare yourself mentally for any challenge you're going to face.
And I really believe too, that we have two voices. We have what I call the inner voice, which is our deep voice of wisdom, the voice that knows we are worthy, no matter what we do or don't do, the voice that's always going to align our actions with our soul's true purpose. And then we have sort of like our inner critic, which is the Miss Chatty who always has something negative to say, who can always find the worst case scenario. And I think it's about practicing understanding that you get to choose which voice to listen to, and being in that place of a daily practice of that, so it becomes easier.
I mean, I think what's interesting as well is I think if you're doing something that aligns with all of your values and your insides and everything feels really good, I think that inner critic almost goes away. I mean, I remember I worked in banking for 8 years, and my inner critic was horrendous, and I never felt whether it was dealing with like imposter syndrome or just feeling like a failure or that I wasn't good enough. And actually now I think I'm doing something so completely different. My inner critic is almost gone. She's just like, actually, you're doing what you love, you're really good at it. And I don't know if that's because I've now so aligned with what I do, like throughout my my whole body, my whole brain, my whole soul, that it's the right place for me. I know I'm doing the right thing. And I think that can be very, very powerful when you do end up doing what you love. And I think when you're not doing something that you're passionate about, there is almost this disconnect, and this, someone sort of saying this, it's just not quite right. It's not you. You're having to be something different. And once you can get it in alignment, it really does help, I think, that inner critic.
Totally. I think that plays a huge role. And so let's talk about this. You worked in banking for 8 years. Did you just like one day decide I can't do this anymore and pick up and go hike up Mount Kilimanjaro? What was that like for you? That awareness that you needed to do that and the steps that you took to actually make that happen?
I think, initially, I thought what I was doing was what I wanted to do. I'd gone to school, I got the good grades, I went to a great university, I moved down to London, got the graduate job, started working for a big global bank. And I am such a positive person. I'll always look at the positive. And I think it's very easy to fall into situations where maybe you haven't necessarily planned or haven't thought through what you wanted to do. I mean, I've said before that I used to spend more time planning my holidays than I did actually planning my life. And what happened is I found out that I was on the wrong pathway, that I was working towards the next promotion, the next financial goal, the next target. And actually, I suddenly realized, I think I was 32 years old, that I hadn't been outside. I couldn't remember the last time I'd been outside. And I was just grey. And I think I'd been promoted earlier in the year. And I was just thinking, hold on, is this what I want to be doing for the next 20, 30 years of my life? Is this going to be my ambition, my drive? Is this how I live my life? And it really did get me thinking. And it wasn't easy to actually, to make that decision, but, various things started to happen. And finally, it was just like, actually, do you know what? I can't do this anymore. It just doesn't align with who I am. And I think, I don't know about other women who work in a corporate environment. Mine was a very male-dominated environment. And I actually found that I was starting to wear a mask at work. So I was becoming a lot more aggressive and ruthless and driven and very cutthroat and very materialistic and driven by money. And I was having to be that person to survive and deal with all the banter and the office politics, all of that stuff that goes on. But because I was spending 16 to 18 hours a day at work, and my whole life was work every single day and constantly addicted to my BlackBerry, that I think I started to change as a person because I was living this other life to, which wasn't who I was or who I wanted to be. And waking up and getting that realization and actually making the decision, it was almost relatively easy to do. And it felt very liberating and I felt very free afterwards. But it did still take me, I'd say, about 18 months to really let me come out, to fully remove the mask that I've been wearing and to be who I truly am. And it wasn't an easy process, and it was definitely a journey that you have to go on. And I also felt very, very lost initially at the start because I'd gone from having this purpose, my career, I was very focused on the next promotion, to suddenly having all of this freedom and this opportunity. I had savings in the bank. I had the whole world at my feet. Where could I go? Where did I want to go? What did I want to go and do? Opportunities like Kilimanjaro came up, which was through my sister. And I went off to stay with my brother over in Australia. I headed out to South America and did all these amazing challenges, but I still didn't really have a purpose, and not having that purpose was incredibly difficult. So actually finding Tough Girl Challenges and taking that step to start my own company and to start doing what I'm doing was incredibly empowering for me, I suppose.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And I want to go back to before you left your corporate job. You said that you felt like you had a mask on all the time, that you had to be someone that wasn't you in order to be successful, it sounds like, and that you felt gray. I think that that's the word that you used. And I'm interested to know if you can talk more about how that felt in your body. Like, what did it feel like for you to not be aligned? And the reason that I'm asking is because I think that that's a really common experience among women. And when we can start to identify that the feelings that I'm feeling surrounding this is why I'm feeling that, and we can start to see the patterns of that, then that's really going to help us break free of that.
I think for me it was I'm very bubbly, I'm very friendly, I'm very outgoing, and sometimes the environments that you work in, and it's not a case of not being professional, but you're in a certain environment, you start getting certain responsibilities, and you're also influenced by the people around you. So you're always told, if you want to be a manager, for example, or the next level up, look to see who's in that position. What are they wearing? How do they act? How do they behave? If you want to get to that position, copy them, use them as a mentor almost. And I was one of the youngest females doing what I was doing. I was always going into rooms with white men in their 40s, and I'd be the 23-year-old, 24-year-old blonde hair having to be taken seriously. And I couldn't be myself in that environment. I had to basically, they weren't going to listen to me unless I was very manly in how I almost, communicated. And I had to communicate in a very confident, very aggressive style. And I am confident with what I was saying, but you do start changing and adapting. And it's very difficult, I'd say, on how it sort of impacts on your body, because I think now that I look back, I can see how stressed I was constantly, just living on adrenaline and just living in a very fast-paced environment. And I don't know, it's very difficult to sometimes it's almost, that story about a frog, which is, it's put in a pan of water, and then the temperature increases, but the frog never jumps out because he doesn't realize that the temperature is being increasing until suddenly it's too late, that the water's already boiling. Whereas if, you put a frog in a pan of boiling water, it would hop out straight away. It was almost like that situation, that I didn't even realize that it was actually even happening until it was, it was too late. And I did feel grey and ill and run down and just exhausted, and I think I just got tired of having to be somebody I'm not, and having to interact with people who I didn't like. And it's almost like this office politics. You've got to be professional, and you've got to build relationships, and you actually have to deal with people who can be negative, or who can be very, very difficult to handle, but you've got to handle them in such a way. Whereas now, I was thinking the other day, I look around at who I choose to spend my time with. everybody is positive, everybody is happy, you know, obviously not all the time, but there's no negativity there. And I just realized actually every person that I engage with is because I want to. It's not because I'm forced to having to spend time with them. And, you know, when you are in an office environment, sometimes the people who surround you, you have no choice over who those people are, but you spend more time with them than your actual family. And that's crazy to think that you're sat next to somebody for 15, 16 hours a day, and actually you may not even like them.
And you have to pretend like you do.
Yeah, and you've got to be, you know, how was your weekend? And, you know, all, you know, and because you've got to have good working relationships, and that's part of being an adult and part of being professional and wanting to progress and move forward. But yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, but I think a lot of women do get lost in this environment, but then I think they get to their 30s maybe, and that's why you have so many women just leaving the corporate sector, just wanting to get out and realizing it's not how they want to be and how they want to behave.
I think that it's really important as women that we are deeply connected to our unique qualities, to who we are, because a lot of times, especially in the corporate world, but I think in any environment, as women, we're brought up through school to perform. And we get rewarded for that. And that's where we're finding our worth. And it's not until we recognized who we are and what we have to offer this world in terms of our unique and amazing qualities, our gifts, that is when we can tap into our true worthiness that is there regardless of if we are doing or not doing something. Like, that's not going to change based on what we accomplish. So I'm curious to know, like, now that you sort of have this perspective, what do you think your unique qualities are? What were you put here to do?
Do you know what's really interesting is one of the first things that I sort of thought about was actually talking. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but, you know, I always used to get told, oh, you know, I talk too much. Oh, you like talking, do you? Oh, talk. And, oh, Sarah, you're talking again. But actually, I think this is why I love the medium of podcasting, because I do get to talk, and I'm hugely interested in other people and hearing about their lives and their stories. And for me, it's really understanding why people do certain things, and, you know, why they made those decisions, what they learned from it. And so for me, I always think that that's my unique quality, is being able to talk to women especially, and to understand where they're coming from, to be able to relate to what they're saying, and to actually follow through and to ask those important questions and to actually learn from them, and then to actually share it with the wider world.
Yeah. Well, and you know, it's no accident that this podcast is in her voice because I feel that our voices as women, our actual voice and our inner voice is critical. It's critical to us living the life that we were put here to live, to being filled with that joy on a daily basis, to fully loving who we are, and also critical to our work in the world as women. And I really believe that until we tap into that voice, until we start speaking with that voice, we're not doing what we were put here to do.
It does inspire me immensely, the amount of female podcasters out there who are sharing their story. And I think there's this, I don't know if you found it as well, there seems to be this like grassroots movement of where women are saying, actually, you know what, we're not being represented in mainstream media, whether that's TV, media, print, whatever. Actually, we're going to do it ourselves. We're going to start our blogs. We're going to start sharing our stories. We're going to start podcasts and start sharing our voice. We're going to start talking about the things that we're passionate about, which don't get heard. And it's incredibly powerful. I love the fact that other women are now being so proactive and are actually starting to speak up and say, actually, no, these are my thoughts, these are my opinions, this is what I think. And okay, it may not agree with what you think I should be like, or how you think I should speak, or what you think I should be talking about, but actually getting our voices out there is so, so important.
It is. And so what advice would you have for our listeners of how they can tap into that? How can they really start to connect with their inner voice and have the courage to act on that?
I think one of the things that I've learned over the past sort of 2 years is allowing myself to be vulnerable, and actually to really share what is happening, the high points, the low points, what I'm going through, and almost to start revealing more of who I am. And I think, you know, initially when I first started podcasting, when I first started Tough Girl Challenges, I had this front, which was, everything's perfect in my life. I'm this strong, healthy, I'm, running a very successful business. And actually, it was only as I got more confident in what I was doing that I could start to share more with people and say, actually, I've been having a bad day, or actually this has happened and I didn't get that campaign that I applied for, and actually my business isn't making any money. And once you start revealing yourself and being really truly honest with and really accepting of who you are, you will get to this point, and I'm not saying it's easy to get to this point, where actually you start to love yourself and you start to accept yourself, and you're just like, this is who I am, warts and all. This is what I think. This is what I'm like. These are my opinions. And yes, you may like me, and yes, you may not like me. But actually, whether you like me or you don't like me, it's actually got nothing to do with me. That's all on you. The only person that I can be is me. I've got to be truly authentic me. And I always do remember when I was growing up, and even when I worked in banking, I'd have managers tell me, "Oh, you're very much like Marmite, Sarah. People either love you or they hate you." And I could never really sort of understand it. But now I think I've got to that point where actually I almost think that's okay. Like I totally understand that we all have these differences and these different viewpoints and these different experiences. And actually the world would be so boring if we were all alike. And it's so good to have this variety. But coming back to what I was saying, that if you can be vulnerable and you can be truly confident with who you are as a person, you know what your values are, you stand behind them, it's an incredibly powerful place to get to.
I completely agree. And I think that the other piece that vulnerability opens up for us is this understanding that this is something we all experience. Like, we're in this together. We collectively share this experience of life. And that when we start to be real with each other, that's when we can make deep and lasting connections with people.
Oh, absolutely. And I also think you start becoming more empathetic, and you have a bigger ability to really appreciate that actually everyone's just trying to do their best. Everyone's just trying, and it is incredibly powerful, but it's not easy to actually get to that point where you are fully comfortable with who you are. But if you can persevere and keep peeling back the onions or keep peeling back the layers, and finally reveal yourself. That was a big reveal. It's a great place to be.
Well, so I'm going to give you an opportunity to be vulnerable with us right now. And I know that you are through hiking the Appalachian Trail in 100 days this summer, and that's a little over 21 miles a day if you average it out, which is like no small feat. And my question to you is, what fears do you have right now? Like, what are your biggest fears around that? And, you already gave us a little bit of an idea of the practice that you're using for that, but like, what other practices are you using to really give yourself the courage to push through that?
I think the biggest fear that I'm having at the moment is actually the fear of failure. Because I've put myself out there. I've told everyone on my podcast. I put it out on social media. I'm doing this through hike in 100 days because that's the amount of time I've got available. And I was chatting with somebody else, and they were saying, well, what happens if you don't make it in 100 days? It's 101 days or 102 days. And I actually said, well, I'd feel like a failure because I didn't do what I set out to do. And I think one of the things that I'm really struggling with at the moment is that I don't like that feeling, and I do like having control of my environment. And I think one of the biggest struggles that I'm going to have when I'm out there is that, say on day 1, I only make 18 miles, and then on day 2, it's, I'm only at 27 miles and not the 42 miles that I need to be. That I'm very conscious that I may start beating myself up, and my negative voice could start coming out and start saying to me, Sarah, this isn't good enough. You've got to hit this mileage every single day to get to Mount Katahdin on 100 days on your birthday on the 10th of September. And I am very worried about that. And so what I've been trying to sort of implement to stop me, beating myself up, is almost to give myself permission to be behind at the start, and actually to say, do you know what, Sarah, it's okay if you start off just doing 15 miles a day to build the mileage up. And I think the other thing I've started to really think about is, as well as trying to complete it in 100 days, it's also what else are my expectations, or what else am I wanting to gain from this experience? So I don't just want to be power marching every single day, 8 hours a day, walking, because that's not going to be fun. And so I really want to introduce an element of fun and just, being really grateful and having gratitude. I found having gratitude for me, especially when I was doing the Marathon des Sables, was hugely beneficial. When I was having these really tough times, I'd be saying to myself, Sarah, this is a choice that you made to come out to be in the Sahara Desert. You've trained for this. You're out in the middle of the Sahara Desert. You've got this beautiful sunshine. You're in this incredible environment. The reason you are here is because of the decisions you've made. And I think if I can just really utilize gratitude and just be really grateful for the fact is that I am living my life how I want to live my life. And I'm doing something that I've wanted to do for years and years and years. And actually I'm out there doing it. So I think if I can put gratitude to good use and, really be kind to myself while I'm on the trail, have faith in myself and just think, actually, Sarah, you can do this, and think of all the reasons why, I think that's what's going to help me to get through the tough days and the low points.
I love this concept of giving ourselves permission. I think we need to do that so much more. I find as women, we can be so darn hard on ourselves all the time, and our expectations for what we should be doing are so high. And if we just give ourselves permission to let it be easy, or to have fun, or give yourself permission to not worry, like even if it's for 15 minutes, I give myself permission for the next 15 minutes to not worry about the thing that you're worried about. It can be very freeing.
Oh, absolutely. And I've actually just written down what you said, let it be easy. And sometimes I think we can make things really hard for ourselves because we almost want to look at all the negatives and everything that can go wrong. Whereas actually, if you can also focus on how amazing it's going to be, all the people that you're going to meet, the sights that you're going to see, and just how wonderful the experience is going to be, whether it's like a pilgrimage or the fact is that I am taking these 100 days off to actually just to get back to nature and to really enjoy it. Permission is very, very powerful. And you're right, we don't give ourselves enough of it. It's almost easier to be kinder to other people than it is to be kind to ourselves.
Yeah, I've actually written out permission slips to myself as like a physical reminder of the thing that I want to give myself permission for. And I find that to be a very powerful practice. Like, okay, I'm going to write myself a permission slip today because that's what I need. And I think the other thing that came up to me too, and I actually coach many women who are doing their first Ironman. And it's something I really love doing. I don't really like coaching second time. People who've already done it once, my favorite is the first. And what I tell them is that every minute that happens, even the hard parts of the day or of the training or the things that are most challenging, they become part of your story. And, when you're telling the story of you hiking the Appalachian Trail in 100 days, the boring part of the story are the days where you hit 21 miles every day, right? Yeah. And so actually the experience becomes the story. And if we can be really open to allowing that story to unfold exactly the way it's supposed to unfold and appreciate each part of that as part of the story that we're creating in that moment, I find that to be a really powerful practice and something we can use in our daily lives too. We don't just have to save that for when we're running a marathon or hiking the Appalachian Trail. We can use that at any point in our life. Like what is the story that I'm creating right now? And how do I want to remember this? And how is this going to be important to me later on when I look back?
Oh, that's incredibly powerful. But it's amazing, actually. I think sometimes people don't get to hear about these little tips and tricks and actually just enjoying the experience and the story that we're going to be telling ourselves. And it is always the overcoming those challenges, those little bumps in the road that you remember, whether it's for me, it was coming up to I think I was 42 miles into the long stage where I was running 52 miles in a day, and my legs were starting to seize up. It was pitch black, and I couldn't see where the next light was, and I was starting to think, how am I going to, keep moving forward? I got to the next checkpoint, and people were starting to camp out, start to open their sleeping bags, and basically they were going to stay there for the night. And I decided to push on. But it's those bits that you remember, and if you can get through them and you remember how you got through them, it's incredibly powerful.
Well, so let's talk about that, because the Marathon des Sables was something I really wanted to give you a chance to talk about. And first, can you just, for people who aren't familiar with that race, can you just tell us exactly what kind of adventure this is?
Absolutely. So it's a multi-stage ultra endurance foot race. It's been named by the Discovery Channel as the world's toughest foot race. I'm not sure if that's true anymore, but it's held in the Sahara Desert every single year. It's now in its 32nd year, and about 1,200 competitors from all over the world go out to compete in it. It involves running 6 marathons in 6 days across the Sahara Desert. You have to be fully self-sufficient, so you have to carry all of your own food and equipment. You do have water provided, but your water is rationed, and you do have your tent or your sleeping area provided as well. But that's basically a dirty rug on the desert floor with a black tarp sort of put over the top of you. The temperatures in the desert can get up to 40, 50 degrees. It's brutal. It's a physical challenge, not only from the heat, the hydration, the complexities of the race, but it's the fact that you're running day after day, carrying everything you need. And on the 4th day, they have something called the long stage, which is generally a double marathon. So when I did it, it was 52 miles, and it's also a timed event as well. So there are cut-off points. If you don't make the cut-off points, then you have to leave the race. So for the 52 mile a day, the cut-off point was 35 hours. So it's an incredible race to be part of, and it's sort of loads of adventurers and explorers and athletes have done it. But it will test you sort of to your limits. But it's also the incredible opportunity to go racing in such an environment as the Sahara Desert, which otherwise wouldn't be safe to go and do it by yourself.
So when you're in that dark moment that you were telling us about, that you can't see the next light, people are stopping for the night, but you decide to push forward. What did your true inner voice, your voice of wisdom, what did that tell you in that moment?
At that point, I was so lucky because we were wearing these, we had to wear these spot trackers. And I was very conscious that this tracker would be this blue dot on someone's computer screen. And I could imagine my friends and my family at home watching my blue dot on the computer screen and seeing where I was and seeing how much further I had to do. And I could actually imagine their voices and what they'd be telling me and how encouraging they'd be, saying, you can do it, Sarah, keep on going. And I don't know if I was going a little bit doolally at this point, but I literally felt as though I was surrounded by my family and this love and this just this encouragement and these words, and I think that almost took over, and it allowed me to just keep on going, and it just to dig to a deeper place than I hadn't been before, because I'd run marathons before, but after you get past 26.2 miles and you pass 30 miles and 40 miles and 45 miles, you do go to places in your mind that you've never been to before. And I was actually just amazed at how positive that place was for me. And it wasn't always positive, but actually it was the element of choice that you had over what you were going to allow. So although you could say you were going to really dark places, I liked it to think that I went to really bright places and white places and inspiring places, and it just showed me how strong I actually was and how determined and focused and driven and how much more I had to give, and that actually I would complete this, I would do it. And it gave me this huge amount of confidence to face any of the other obstacles that I've come across.
I love that you chose which places you went to. You chose bright places instead of dark places. And that is in itself a powerful practice, that understanding that we get to decide. We get to decide where we're going to go in our mind and our hearts and our body. That choice is ours every single day. And when we can tap into that, that's where our power is, truly.
Oh, that's lovely. You've got a wonderful way with words.
Oh, thank you. Well, I mean, it's you bringing them out in me for sure, Sarah. So if you could say your biggest lesson that you took away from that insane race, I can't even imagine. What was your biggest lesson?
I think for me, it was just having the ability to know that I could do anything that I wanted to do and I could achieve anything that I wanted to achieve. And all I had to do was to really decide what it was that I wanted to do and why it was important for me. And that actually, if I had a big goal, a big challenge, that I could be really logical and work through a plan. I could prepare myself. I could get myself physically ready for it and mentally ready for it. But I could go out and achieve it. And that actually, with determination, focus, hard work, preparation, I could achieve it. There was nothing that was going to stop me. And I think that for me is hugely inspiring to think that actually, no matter what I do, I will always be able to learn from the experience.
Yeah, I love that. And I will just add as an acknowledgement and an honor to you that regardless of what you do, that I absolutely believe you can accomplish all of those things and still you are worthy if you never accomplish one of those things. And to me, that's the power of worthiness truly, is that it's that recognizing, like you say, that we can if we choose, but that it's not, it doesn't have to define our own worthiness and how much we have to offer to this world. And I find great inspiration, and I just want to honor and acknowledge your worthiness and your willingness to be vulnerable with us today and to share these lessons with us, because it's so powerful for us to hear women like you sharing this story.
Oh, thank you so much.
You're welcome. So Sarah, as we wrap up, I would love for you to share with our listeners how they can connect with you, how they can listen to your podcast where there's lots more inspiring women that you're interviewing, and how they can connect with you on social media.
Oh, thank you so much. Everything is at toughgirlchallenges.com. My website contains all the information of all of the women that I've interviewed. It's got all of my links to my social media. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and I will be vlogging from the Appalachian Trail, so people will be able to track that journey as well throughout the summer. But toughgirlchallenges.com is the best place to go.
Wonderful. And I will put links to all of that wonderful stuff in my show notes on kellycovert.com. So to wrap it up, when do you leave for the Appalachian Trail? When do you begin?
I fly out of London on the 30th of May, and I will be starting the Appalachian Trail on the 3rd of June.
Oh my gosh. Well, I can't wait to follow you along, and I can't wait to hear you tell your story in whatever way, shape, or form that takes. I'm so excited for you. And thank you so much for being on the In Her Voice podcast today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure. And I've learned so much from just being on your show as well. And I think what you said, let it be easy, is going to really stick with me while I'm on the Appalachian Trail.
Fantastic. Well, and I will send you those vibes too. Ease and flow, ease and flow.
All the way.
All right, Sarah, thank you so much. She is just such an inspiration. And this podcast is coming out on June 20th. So Sarah has been on the trail now for 18 days. And I hope that you guys definitely go take a look at the show notes. I put a link to follow her along. She said she's going to be doing some video blogs during her time there. So definitely go check that out. And June 20th is also a special day because today is my birthday. I am a person who does not ever feel bad about getting older. I definitely see each year as a year that I have more wisdom, a year that I have learned more about who I am, a year that I have become more of who I want to be. But I do have to tell you, I love presents. Seriously, love presents. And if you guys want to give me an awesome birthday present, all you have to do is go leave a review on iTunes for In Her Voice. That would be such a fantastic birthday present, and I would be so grateful. You can find the link in the show notes, which is at kellycovert.com. and just click it and then go to iTunes and leave your review there for me. And I've been doing this thing lately when anyone leaves a review, I will put it out on Instagram and Twitter. So be looking for that too. Thank you guys so much for all that you do. I am so grateful that you are here, that you are making you matter today because you are important and we need you in this world doing what you were put here to do.